Welcome back, everyone. For this session, we have a great interview titled Transparent, Fair Mobile Banking, Expanding Customer Reach. And joining us for this interview is Hassan Waqar, Founder and Chief Executive Officer for MoneeMint, and hosting this interview is David Parker, Director from Polymath Consulting. David, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, and it's my great pleasure to have Hassan Waqar join us, the founder and the Chief Executive Officer of MoneeMint. So thank you very much. And Hassan, nice to meet you, sir.
Nice.
Your website, I'm going to kick straight in here. Your website has some bold claims about offering the freshest banking experience with a banking experience like never before. One has to ask, there are an awful lot of neobanks out in the market and also a lot of them launching recently. How and why are you different?
So MoneeMint, we're targeting sort of the Islamic community. So we are launching a digital Islamic bank, which is focusing on the Sharia law when it comes to banking. But one of the key differences between us and sort of, if we look at the other challenger, the Islamic challenger banks that are coming up in the market now, is we also label ourselves as sort of an ethical bank, which sort of gives a wider reach to our market audience. And when we say sort of, looking at the ethical bank, we actually sort of understand. So we conducted a consumer research whereby we actually understood what it is that everyday people want to see from their bank, and that was transparency, knowing where their money is invested, and industries. The people wanted their monies not to be invested, not to be dealt with in industries that are sort of not ethical. For example, gambling, tobacco, weapons, and etc. So we're sort of one of the first challenger Islamic banks in the country, and we're focusing on sort of our younger millennials and bringing them on to sort of the ethical finance spectrum. And when we say that, sort of we encourage them to save, invest in sort of invest in sort of pensions or wherever they sort of see fit. And with MoneeMint, what we're doing is we're launching a wide range of different products. And that also includes sort of wealth management, so it includes wealth management, pensions, investing in sort of Sharia compliant bonds. And we're working with sort of different third parties to bring sort of these products into the market.
Okay, so it's quite interesting that. I mean, I was involved in the day in actually helping launch Islamic Bank of Britain into the UK. Which was the first Islamic bank really to try and launch and crack the market. And one of the things they found very much was that a lot of people talked about wanting to bank Islamic, but actually when it came to doing it, they weren't as concerned or as engaged. And obviously, if you look at Islamic Bank of Britain today, in relative numbers, it's not a huge bank. Yet, if you look at the number of Muslims who say they're practicing Muslims in the UK, it's a far, far higher number. Now, you could argue that, given they've been around now some 15 years, their customer base should be much larger than it is if all those that say they're practicing Muslims, and I'm not even talking about just hereditary Muslims, but actual practicing Muslims, were to bank with a Sharia compliant bank, their membership base would be huge. What makes you feel you can crack this, I suppose, the apathy that seems to be out there between those that claim they're practicing Muslim, and yet most of them are quite happy to bank in non-Sharia compliant banks?
So I think we should move away from sort of fintech for a second and come into sort of the traditional banking route and sort of what happens in sort of a traditional Islamic bank. And actually, I'm talking from experience over here is when I was looking at mortgages for a home purchase. And I wanted to go through sort of the Sharia product, but unfortunately, that product was not readily available for an everyday Muslim like me. And the reason behind that is because, for example, the Islamic Bank of Britain, they wanted sort of a higher deposit, and they want sort of mortgage every single sort of property or every property type. They're very selective and picky on that. And I think one of the biggest issues that the Muslim community are facing when it comes to banking is there's not enough offerings, or there's not enough competition when it comes to the banking. And also it's the way that the banks are offering their products and services. For example, if we look at Islamic Bank of Britain, who are now now known as Al Rayyan, they sort of have a legacy onboarding process whereby you sort of print out a form, you fill it in handwritten, you go to the branch, they do your KYC manual. So that sort of puts people away, and especially if the branches are not sort of readily available on the high street per se. So that sort of puts people away. And the question is, why is it that I have to pay more, or I have to go through a lot of more struggle to bank with an Islamic bank, whereas I can go down, HSBC or Barclays and open up a bank with them without any troubles? So that is a question where a lot of people ask: is it really worth the hassle? Is it really worth the cost? And also sort of the service that these banks are offering. So when it now comes back into fintech, sort of the opportunity for Islamic fintech is that what we can then do is we can sort of take sort of conventional, Islamic banks, bring them onto sort of, bring their products onto the platform, and then sort of offer a unique, seamless sort of onboarding process and sort of fine line the whole customer experience. And that's where sort of we as Islamic fintechs have a greater opportunity and a greater market reach compared to sort of the traditional Islamic banks. And looking at sort of the competition available in the UK when it comes to sort of the high street Islamic banks, I mean, we only have a selected few, but sort of Islamic Bank of Britain being the biggest one in the market.
Okay, your website talks about the freshest banking experience then, but are you actually regulated as a bank under the PSR or an electronic money regulated under the FCA? And actually, do you see a difference in the market on what and how you can offer things with those different regulation structures?
So we're not a regulated bank. We are an agent of, we are a distributor of Rails Bank, who we are working very closely with for offering our prepaid debit card in the first instance. We've identified, so initially the route was that we were going to go and apply for a whole banking license and sort of spend millions on that and sort of work on that. But actually we moved away from that and we said, hang on a second. We don't need to go in for a full banking license just yet, when we can actually offer the same products that banks are offering, even if it is through sort of the marketplace. And I think with that approach that we've taken, we've saved a lot of money, a lot of time to sort of launch the product into the market. And it saves a lot of hassle for sort of a startup or sort of a small fintech to go through sort of regulatory approvals and stuff like that, when actually we can piggyback off sort of an already regulated entity and work with them on sort of offering the product. But we are looking to go into sort of the full bank and apply for a banking license, but it just comes to the fact that let's just test the water, see how the market is, and then we want to go through that route.
So your safeguarding funds accounts are interest-free, of course, to comply.
They are interest-free.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. The issue many challenger banks or bank challengers, as you'd call yourself obviously now, have is in terms of getting traction, is that many of them have relatively few salaries being paid into them, in that they're often used as a secondary account rather than a main account. How do you see you'll be able to address this, or is your model different? Because obviously there's many different models out there. How do you actually see yourself working and actually, I suppose, making money?
So I think one of the key angles. So I'm going to split this into two. So when it comes to salary payments, the reason why people don't tend to use challenger banks to get that money saved is still that building of trust factor, and people sort of want to make sure that we still have that trust within the banks. For example, if your Barclays app was to go offline and you don't have access to your card, etc., you can still walk into a branch and take out cash and do all your banking. Whereas with a challenger bank, for example, if the app goes down or the service is not available, you're pretty much stuck. And I think the key differentiating point with MoneeMint is what we're doing in that space is we're completely app based, but we're partnering with sort of high street agents, if we per se, for example, the post office or PayPoint, and saying, look, we want our customers to come to you, and if they want to take out money or withdraw money using their card or using their account, they are able to, they are able to do so. So we're not taking away that whole experience of, let's say, high street banking, but we're just reinventing that model when it comes to the whole banking experience, where we're saying, okay, we don't need branches and all that stuff. We can partner with, let's say, the PayPoints or the Royal Mails and say, okay, you know what? we're now offering you to go and sort of pick up your cash or pay in your cash into the accounts. Now, coming on to the point where how sort of an Islamic fintech will make money. So looking at the Islamic products and how we make money. So when somebody invests in a bank or puts money into a bank, ideally, typically what happens is the bank will then invest that money into, let's say, real estate, or we'll take real estate as an example, right? And whatever profit they make on top of that, on that investment, is they will then pass that down to the customer. So they'll have an agreed rate with the customer, let's say 20% or 10%, whatever it is. They'll then pass that down to the customer. Now, in a challenger bank scenario where we don't actually have banking license, or we're not regulated to do that sort of investment, what then happens is we then make money off the back of our marketplace products. So, for example, remittances, we can make commission-based money off remittances, and also if we're working with sort of a regulated bank, which MoneeMint is we're in advanced conversations with one of the Islamic banks here, where we're looking to offer sort of the mortgage products to them. We take a commission out of that, and also when it comes to home sales and all sorts of stuff. So there is a lot of different revenue streams you can bring in. You obviously have the traditional product-based revenue stream where you have, you pay whatever 20p to take out cash from an ATM, etc. But we're steering away from that. We don't take that as a big opportunity for us. Our biggest opportunity is, the actual different products that we can offer and taking that commission from them.
Okay, and therefore, do you see MoneeMint more as a spending platform / account, or more as a run your life type offering?
So we see ourselves. It's a bit of both. It depends on the consumer base as well. But what we encourage is that you invest and save rather than spend. I mean, obviously, we get the, as with any card program, there is a revenue stream from interchange, etc. But we want people to save, invest, and sort of grow that money, and that's where sort of the ethical finance piece comes into place. So we sort of target, our approach is that, but obviously we see ourselves as two, because when we have seen when we conducted our surveys, we saw sort of a 60-40%, where 60% wanted options to invest in a Sharia compliant investment product, whereas 40% were not really interested in the investment or the savings piece. They were interested more in sort of the spending and sort of having that marketplace of different products. So I mean, I'd say that we still have that 60% consumer base there. That sort of is more the the saving part rather than spending.
You talked about on the regulatory side, you're partnering with Railsbank as your regulated partner, but how are you handling the other technology requirements in terms of the account and everything? Are you outsourcing everything? Are you building your own middleware? How are you actually structuring that in terms of, because obviously there's not a plethora of Sharia compliant software out there, because, whilst everyone, a lot of platforms out there calculate interests and everything else, there's not many out there that actually understand and can calculate and manage Tadawul and all the different Sharia compliant products.
So we're working with a company based in Dubai who actually have a Sharia compliant core banking platform, and that sits at the base of our technology. And then all the mobile app development is done in-house. So we have our own team who's developing the mobile apps. And I think this was one of the key challenges that we faced at the early stages, is where we wanted to find a vendor that was actually in line with the Sharia compliant product offerings. And I think I think that's where one of the challenges that a lot of these Islamic fintechs still face is finding the right supplier for the Islamic offerings that they have. And because of the limited amount of suppliers that are available in the market, it makes it really difficult for it's very hard to sort of negotiate or compete with other vendors to have that offering there. So So we obviously have a team based in Dubai.
And your first products you're launching then again to be after obviously the prepaid debit card again to be the investment and savings side or what?
Yeah,
or the
so
mortgage or what's going to be first?
So our first product is a prepaid debit card. And then followed on, we're going to include remittances because we've identified remittance as a big sort of chunk of our revenue stream. So remittances will come in, and then after that, as in phase sort of 1.3, is that we're going to bring in sort of investment products. And we're actually still in conversations with a wealth management company, a Sharia compliant wealth management company, to help us offer that to our clients.
Okay, so and mortgages, where do they fit in that? Because
So
obviously you talked about your own experience.
With mortgages, we're still trying to identify the correct route that we want to take around that, because sometimes it's not necessarily useful. It's not needed that a mortgage has to be the product. There are different alternatives to a mortgage. So we're still trying to identify what is the best product that we can offer to our clients. And I think that sort of offering will take some time for it to come into our marketplace.
Okay. As you look ahead now then, in terms of the speed of your growth and everything else, are you going to be limiting yourself? Is this a UK play, a European play? What are the geographics markets you're going after then, really?
So initially, at the first phase, we're looking at the UK market with a potential expansion to Europe. Our sort of next international expansion is to the Middle East, so Dubai and Saudi. Where we have identified sort of opportunities in that market to offer the services. And I think one of the key things that we want to identify, we need to tackle, is obviously the regulations and sort of how we can operate under what regulations we can operate to ensure that we can still provide the same products but not actually go through a whole banking application. So we're still looking at sort of the we're very interested in Dubai, and I think that will be sort of the next step after Europe to actually hit into Dubai.
Okay, and sort of what sort of timings do you see around this, or is that a 5-year vision, or realistically, when do you think you might? We're
looking at a 5-year vision for that. I think we really want to crack the UK market, get the product right, to then take that and replicate that.
So if we're sitting here doing this interview in 2 years' time, 24 months from today, what are you going to be telling me is where is the business in 24 months, basically, if we're doing the same interview in 2 years' time?
Well, so, we want to go into Europe. And then
so will you be there? Will you be in Europe within 2 years?
We'll be in Europe within 2 years, yeah. We're thinking about that to do it sort of at the end of year 1. Where once we have that good traction, we can actually go into Europe because we can just replicate the model. But at the end of year 2, we want to be in Europe and now thinking about Dubai, and sort of possibly applying for our own banking license or our own EMI, depending on sort of what route we're taking.
And in terms of penetration of the Muslim base here in the UK, what sort of numbers do you think is it possible to achieve in the next couple of years then?
So we are anticipating a growth in the next 3 years to be sort of around the 1 million mark, 1 million customers on board. And it's a split between Muslims and non-Muslims. But we're looking at a 1 million mark at the end of year 3.
Right, so I'm looking forward to do this interview again in 2 years, when, judging by that, you should be at about 600,000-700,000 live customers. And that sounds like a great invitation to the organisers to have you back in 2 years, and we can repeat this chat and see where you are and benchmark you. Hassan, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing your vision for the Islamic market here in the UK and in fact in Europe, and where MoneeMint may be getting to as part of that. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much, speakers. That's certainly leaving everyone with a lot to think about, and thanks, David, for those projections, but we'll see what happens. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.